You pause at the south-facing door as evening gathers over the steppe. The grassland is losing its gold by degrees, fading into rose, then blue-grey until earth and sky seem to meet in one quiet colour. Behind you, the land stretches far, open at first glance, though never truly empty. Animals move in the distance as small dark marks among the pasture. The air carries dry grass, wool, and the faint smoke of fuel. In front of you stands the round home that has welcomed evenings like this for centuries. In English, many people say yurt, but in Mongolia, the familiar word is jer, a word that also means home. The shape feels calm at once. Low circular walls rise from a folding wooden lattice. Roof poles angle upward toward the round crown at the top. Thick felt made from sheep's wool wraps the frame, and ropes hold the coverings close against weather. The whole dwelling seems to contain a useful contradiction. It is light enough to move, yet sturdy enough to stand through hard seasons. The doorway usually faces south in Mongolian custom, a feature noted again and again in descriptions of the jer. It welcomes light, helps avoid some of the coldest northern winds, and gives the interior a clear orientation. Customs do vary by family, region, and era, and it would be too simple to imagine one exact arrangement for all time. Still, the south-facing door is one of the most consistently described features, so the threshold before you feels shaped by long practice as much as by timber and felt. The frame may be painted in orange, blue, or red, the colour softened by years of touch. Even where paint has worn thin, use remains visible. This is not a house meant to sit still and be admired from a distance. It is meant to be opened, crossed, repaired, warmed, and lived in. The felt walls hold the smell of wool and weather. The outer ropes are practical first of all, though they have their own plain beauty. They keep the layers firm against wind and winter strain. Portable round dwellings of this kind have deep roots in inner Asian history, reaching back long before the age of Genghis Khan. Exact forms changed across time, and historians are careful about turning many centuries into one frozen picture. Even so, the continuity is real. Archaeology, written accounts, and later observation all point to enduring traditions of mobile pastoral life, organized around herds, seasons, and households, able to move with skill across wide country. Now the evening deepens. A little smoke slips from the roof opening and leans sideways into the cooling air. Somewhere nearby, an animal shifts its weight and breathes. The land is growing colder, and the door before you seems to hold not only warmth, but a whole pattern of life. You linger one moment more at the threshold, aware that this round shelter is made of timber, wool, labour, and memory, ready once again to receive the night. Inside, the hearth breathes a patient warmth into the round room. The change is immediate. Outside, the air had sharpened with the sinking sun, but here the cold loosens its hold. The felt walls turn the wind into something distant, no longer a force, but only a faint reminder beyond the shelter. The light changes too. Instead of the broad, dimming sky, there is firelight and the warm glow it lays across wood, metal, leather, and cloth. It is a small room, yet it does not feel cramped. The circle seems to widen as your eyes adjust. At the centre sits the hearth, the practical heart of the home. In older periods, this might have been a more open fire, while in many later and modern jurs, an iron stove occupies that same central place. The details change across centuries, and it is worth being careful about that, but the principle remains steady. Heat and cooking belong in the middle, and family life gathers around them. Above, the roof crown lets smoke out and light in, linking sky and fire in one vertical line through the household. You can feel the logic of the ger in your own body. Heat rises and spreads while the felt keeps it from escaping too quickly. That insulation is one reason the dwelling has endured in a land of extremes. Thick wool felt, made from materials close at hand, holds warmth in winter and softens summer heat as well. Travellers have long remarked on how comfortable a ger can be when its layers are properly arranged and the fire carefully managed. Experienced families can assemble one in about 2 hours. Such speed does not mean roughness. It means knowledge refined over generations. The timber frame shows that knowledge in every part. The wall lattice opens into a ring. The roof poles distribute weight inward to the crown. Ropes and bands brace the structure so pressure is shared. Very little suggests waste. Objects have purpose and place. Storage chests stand along the walls. Bedding may be folded by day and spread by night. Saddles, harness, buckets, bowls and tools all fit into a space that must remain orderly because it is both house and movable world. The centre is not only useful, but social. Here water is heated, meat simmered, tea prepared. Here damp clothing or straps can dry. Here conversation settles naturally once the outdoor work is done. A ger is sometimes described as simple, but simple does not mean empty. The arrangement of space can reflect ideas of respect, age, hospitality, and customary roles within the household. Exact placements vary, especially across regions and times, yet there is still a recognizable order that makes the room immediately legible to those who live within it. Above you, the crown opening still holds a little evening blue. It has long served practical needs, but some researchers have also noted that the ger can align closely with the movements of sun and season, almost as a quiet tool for marking time. That does not mean every family treats it like a formal instrument. More often, daily life is simply lived in close relation to recurring patterns in the sky. For now, the pattern you notice most is the one between flame and shelter. The stove gives a faint ticking as it warms. Steam begins to whisper from a pot. Felt, timber, and wool absorb the heat and return it slowly. The round walls do what they have done on so many evenings before. They gather the ordinary necessities of life into a protected circle where food, warmth, and company can continue long after the light has left the grassland outside. Soon the scent of tea and simmering stew begins to fill the ger. It arrives in layers. First comes the warmth of heated water and metal. Then the richer smell of milk tea, slightly salty and deeply familiar. A drink suited to climate as much as to taste. After that comes the stew itself, likely made with mutton or goat, perhaps with onion if it is available, perhaps with flour, noodles, or pieces of bread, depending on season and household means. Diet on the steppe has long been shaped above all by livestock, and evening food reflects that enduring relationship between people, animals, and pasture. Salty milk tea is one of the tastes most closely associated with Mongolian domestic life. It can be prepared in different ways, and no single recipe belongs to every century or every family. Tea leaves, once reaching the steppe through trade, became woven into everyday routine. Milk might come from sheep, goats, cattle, yaks, mares, or camels in some regions, according to place and herd. Salt gives the drink its distinctive edge. The result is not a sweet delicacy but a warming staple, nourishing and practical in a land of distance and cold. You watch the tea being poured, steam lifting in pale threads and disappearing above the stove. Flatbread waits nearby, plain and satisfying. Bread traditions vary, and mobile households did not depend on large oven loaves in the same way that settled farming communities often did. Even so, simple breads and other dough foods have long had a place in the diet, especially in forms suited to griddles, pans, or shared cooking within a portable home. Beside them, the stew thickens, and the scent of animal fat grows mellow and soft. The meal is not lavish, but it is substantial, and that matters. Steppe life has often depended on turning what the herds provide into food that can sustain labour, travel, and cold weather. Meat, milk, curds, dried cheese, cream, and fermented mare's milk in season belong not only to cuisine, but to economy. Dairy products are especially important because milk cannot always be used fresh at once. Families boil, ferment, strain, churn, dry, and preserve it in many forms. What appears in the evening bowl has been supported by many earlier tasks, some still visible, others already folded into habit. You hear the small sounds of serving, the dip of a ladle, the touch of wooden bowls, the tear of bread passed from hand to hand. The household eats in a pattern shaped by familiarity. No one has to explain where to set the cup or how to pass the bowl. These movements are learned early, absorbed as naturally as language. If children are present, they hover between hunger and play, drawn into stillness for a little while by the smell of hot food. Mutton appears often in descriptions of Mongolian meals because sheep have long been central to many households. Goat is common too, as are other animal products according to region, season, and means. A particular pot could always differ. Hard weather, celebration, shortage, or a visiting guest might change the contents entirely. It is important not to imagine one timeless menu fixed forever in place. Yet the broad pattern is clear and well supported. Livestock sustain the table, and the table reflects the work of herden life. The tea is warming and slightly bracing, the salt sharpening the milk's richness. The stew follows deeper and slower, carrying the patient flavour of long simmering. Bread steadies everything. Outside, the air keeps cooling over the pasture, but inside, nourishment and shelter begin to feel like one thing. The family meal is not separate from the economy of the steppe. It is that economy made intimate, made edible, made evening soft. As you eat, you begin to sense how much of this comfort depends on daily transformation. Grass becomes milk through animals. Milk becomes tea, curds, butter, and stores for later through labour. Wool becomes felt. Dried dung becomes fuel. Almost nothing useful is wasted. Resourcefulness here is not a grand virtue performed for admiration. It is an ordinary habit, repeated so often that it becomes nearly invisible, and it is one reason a household can endure across distance, weather, and season. As bowls are passed from hand to hand, the labours of the day soften into memory. They do not disappear because tomorrow will ask for them again, but for now, they lose their sharpness and settle into the room like a fading echo. The work behind this meal began long before dusk. At first light, there would have been animals to find, tether, milk, watch, or drive. Herding on the steppe is not one repeated gesture. It is an attentive way of moving through land, weather, and animal behaviour. Sheep drift, goats climb, horses test distance. Cattle ask for their own slower kind of watching. You can almost trace the day in reverse from the objects along the wall. A bucket recalls milking. A coil of rope suggests tether lines and posts. A skin bag hints at carrying or storage. Even the felt around you speaks of shearing, cleaning, rolling, pressing, and shared labour. Household life and pastoral life are so closely joined that one almost disappears into the other. The home is not apart from the work. It is one of the places where the work continues in another form. Milking is especially woven into the rhythm of ordinary life. In productive seasons, dairy work can be constant. Fresh milk must be dealt with quickly. It is set aside, stirred, boiled, fermented, churned, thickened, or dried into forms that will last longer. Some of these foods are for immediate use. Others are for guests, for travel, for trade, or for the leaner weeks ahead. This makes the household more than a place where food is consumed. It is a place where food is preserved, transformed, and prepared for future need. People of the Jia have also spent part of the day caring for the dwelling itself. Felt must be checked, ropes tightened, openings watched for leaks before weather makes them serious. Ashes need clearing, fuel must be gathered and stacked. In treeless steppe regions, dried dung has long been an important source of fuel, its slow, steady burning becoming part of the domestic atmosphere many travellers remember. Where wood is available, it may be used too, but in open grassland one cannot simply assume a ready supply. Even the smell of tonight's fire carries the geography of the land within it. Children, when present, enter this world through imitation long before anyone explains it formally. A small hand helps carry a cup. A young voice is sent to fetch a tool. A game played on the floor may mirror the larger world of herding and travel outside. Handmade toys have often been part of childhood on the steppe, shaped from bone, cloth, wood, or other materials close at hand. Play and training are never very far apart. A child learns the household by moving through it. There is weariness in the room, but not heaviness. Evening allows the body to return from scattered tasks. Boots loosen, shoulders lower. Someone mends a strap in the firelight. Someone folds cloth for tomorrow. Household work rarely ends in a clean line, but what remains now is small enough to be companionable. It would be easy for an outsider to romanticize such a scene and notice only peace. But nomadic life has always asked for endurance, judgment, and effort. Weather can turn suddenly. Animals can weaken or wander. Distances are long and supplies must be managed carefully. To acknowledge that does not disturb the evening. It simply makes the warmth more honest. Comfort here is not an automatic backdrop. It is made daily through skill, memory, and labour. By firelight, you begin to understand that this quiet home is built for movement. At first, that can feel like a contradiction. The Jia is intimate, settled, complete. Yet every part of it carries the memory of being folded, loaded, transported, and raised again elsewhere. Mongolian nomadic families have traditionally moved with the needs of season and pasture, often 2 or 3 times in a year, though exact patterns depend on region, climate, herd, and household practice. Mobility here is not aimless wandering. It is a careful answer to the land. You imagine the walls folded down at the end of a season. The lattice closes inward. Roof poles are stacked. Felt sheets are rolled. Chests are secured. Everything that seemed fixed becomes a set of parts, each with a place in the journey. A practiced family can assemble a Jia in about 2 hours. That speed is not hurried improvisation. It is accumulated knowledge. Each knot, pole, and layer has its order. Even children may know what is handed up first and what is tied last. The landscape decides much. Summer grazing, autumn movement, spring shelter, winter protection. Each asks different things. Winter camps are often chosen in sheltered places, near folds in the land or natural barriers that soften harsh winds. Such care protects not only the people but the livestock, whose well-being remains central to everything. To outside eyes, the steppe can seem empty and uniform, but experienced herders read it closely as a map of exposure and refuge. This evening's gyre stands in a place chosen with that same attention. Ground matters, water matters, grazing matters, shelter matters. Families may return to known seasonal circuits shaped by long practice, yet no route is perfectly fixed forever. Conditions change from year to year, and continuity always includes adjustment. What endures is not a rigid path, but the skill of noticing what the land is offering now. The portable architecture expresses that way of life plainly. Timber, wool, rope, hide, cloth, and metal fittings combine into a dwelling that works with movement rather than against it. The word sustainability is modern, but the underlying pattern is older. Use what can be obtained, make good use of animal products, repair what can be repaired, and build shelter that can travel without losing its usefulness. The GER survives not only because it is symbolic, but because it is efficient, resilient, and well-suited to pastoral life. You begin to sense why the round form endures. Wind moves around it more gently than around sharp corners. Heat gathers evenly. The interior organizes itself around a center. Weight can be distributed with strength and economy. It is architectural intelligence so familiar that it can almost be mistaken for simplicity. Yet the longer you look, the more deliberate every feature appears. Even tonight, when nothing is being packed, movement is present in thought. Saddles rest ready. Harness dries after use. The animals outside are not a background detail, but the living basis of the household. A home that can travel belongs to people who understand that stability does not always mean staying in one place. Sometimes it means carrying order with you and remaking it faithfully wherever the next camp stands. There is tenderness in that. The gyre is not rootless. It puts down roots again and again. Each time it rises, the south-facing door returns. The hearth returns to the centre. Bedding, chests, bowls and tools settle back into familiar positions. Children grow within a house that moves and yet remains itself. Memory is not tied only to permanent walls of stone. It can also live in pattern, orientation, and repeated acts of making home. Then the oldest voice in the gyre rises softly beneath the roof crown. The meal is over. The first tasks of clearing away are done, and conversation has thinned into an easier quiet. From that quiet comes a story, or perhaps only the beginning of one. It may concern an ancestor known closely within the family, and hardly at all beyond it. It may recall a journey, a good horse, a severe winter survived through careful judgment, or a saying repeated so often that it belongs equally to memory and instruction. Oral tradition on the steppe has long carried history, humour, identity and ethics in forms more flexible than writing. It is wise to be modest about what can be claimed in detail. Not every Mongolian evening in every era would have contained formal storytelling, and no single domestic scene can stand for all households. Yet communal storytelling is widely recognized as an important social practice. Songs, proverbs, genealogical memory, local tales, epics, and personal recollections all help bind generations together. The spoken word does practical work here, much like the hearth. It keeps knowledge warm and passing onward. Children listen, though perhaps not without shifting first. One leans against folded bedding. Another draws a finger through the wool beside them. The old voice continues in an unhurried rhythm. That pace matters. In oral tradition, rhythm helps memory. Familiar phrases and repeating images allow a story to remain alive without becoming fixed into a single, exact text. A telling may bend a little according to audience, season, or purpose, while still remaining recognizably the same inheritance. Above, the crown opening holds a dark round of sky. By day, light entering there can help orient the household to the progress of time. Some scholars have described the Yurt as functioning in part like a sun clock or calendar, noting how sunlight may fall in ways that relate to hours and seasons. Whether every family thought of it in those terms is less certain. What is clear is that the opening keeps sky and household in direct relationship. Smoke leaves there. Day enters there. At night, stars appear there. The story rising now seems almost to follow that path, lifting toward the opening and returning again like warm air. Perhaps an elder mentions Chinggis Khan, not as a distant monument, but as one great name within a much longer remembered past. Perhaps a line of descent is recited, placing the children among generations of herders before them. Genealogy has often mattered strongly in steppe societies, though each family would shape that memory in its own way. You notice how well the room itself supports listening. The circle makes inward attention easy. Firelight touches cheeks, hands, a wooden chest, the rim of a bowl set aside after tea. Felt walls soften sound and return voices gently. Outside there may be a small animal call or the brush of wind, but nothing breaks the calm. The sounds beyond the walls only remind the listeners where they are. Stories are not always solemn. Laughter may appear at a remembered mishap or at the cleverness of an animal in a tale. Advice may hide inside humour. A proverb may enter so naturally that nobody needs to announce it as a lesson. This is one reason oral tradition lasts. It enters memory not as dry information, but as voice, gesture, warmth, and shared time. There is room, too, for uncertainty. Not every remembered ancestor can be fully verified. Not every old tale can be separated cleanly into history and embellishment. But uncertainty does not empty the evening of truth. Family memory can preserve values, emotions, identity, and continuity even when exact dates blur. What historians can document and what households remember do not always overlap perfectly, yet both belong to the human experience of the past. At length, the old voice lowers. Someone else adds a small correction or extension. A younger voice asks a question. Above them, a few early stars show through the crown. Beneath that opening, words pass from one generation to another, almost as steadily as heat from the stove. In this way, the Yurt shelters not only bodies and tools, but narrative itself, the spoken thread by which a moving people remain connected across seasons, camps, and years. Later, you step outside where the night has opened like a dark blue sea. The air is colder now, and the stored warmth of the Yurt lingers on your skin for a moment, before the steppe takes over again. Behind you, the round dwelling glows faintly around the door and at the seams, a low lantern resting on the land. A little smoke still rises from the roof opening and seems, for a moment, to dissolve directly into the stars. The sky is immense in a way that makes language feel smaller. Without city light, the stars gather thickly, not scattered but poured across the dark. Their brightness has shaped pastoral life in quiet ways that do not always leave written traces. People who live closely with weather, distance, and animals learn the habits of night by practice long before anyone gives those habits formal explanation. The stars can be beauty, orientation, company, and a sign of the clear cold that may arrive before dawn. Nearby, the livestock settle into their own evening rhythm. A sheep gives a soft sound and then grows quiet. A horse stamps once and lowers its head. There is no perfect silence on the steppe, only a broad field of small sounds, breathing, shifting, the whisper of grass, perhaps the distant bark of a dog. These do not disturb the night. They define it. They remind you that household life extends beyond the felt walls to include the animals on which the household depends. Weather remains a constant participant in this life. Tonight is calm. On another evening, the wind might test every rope, every layer of felt, every judgment made in choosing camp. In winter, cold can press so hard against a gyre that the value of good insulation, good fuel, and a sheltered site becomes impossible to ignore. Families have long preferred winter camps that offer protection from harsh winds, and that preference comes from practical experience, not sentiment. And yet caution does not erase belonging. The open land and the gyre seem made for one another, each giving meaning to the other. Without the steppe, the mobility of the dwelling would make less sense. Without the dwelling, the steppe would be exposure without center. Identity grows in that relationship. The home is portable, but the culture it sustains is deeply tied to place, not always to one fixed plot of ground, but to recurring landscapes, waters, pastures, and remembered camps. In more recent times, that relationship has met new pressures. Roads, schooling, wage work, environmental strain, markets and changing policies have altered the conditions of nomadic life in many places. It is enough to note this gently. The gyre before you is not a relic untouched by history. Nomadic households have adapted before, and they continue to adapt now. Adaptation does not mean disappearance. Many families still preserve patterns of herding, movement, and domestic practice that carry long continuities forward even as details change. The stars above make centuries feel unexpectedly near. The era of Chinggis Khan, later states, modern engines and distant electric light all belong to a long historical braid, yet the scene before you remains legible across time. A round felt home, animals nearby, a family within, and the dark steppe under a bright sky. Some things endure because they are beautiful. Others endure because they work. The gyre has lasted, perhaps, because it is both. You turn back toward the south-facing door. Its painted frame is dim now, but its shape remains clear. The ropes around the felt have almost vanished into shadow. The whole dwelling appears calm and self-contained, though you know it is held in place by countless ties to herd, weather, labour, kinship, and memory. Around it the land stretches on, patient and nearly still. In this cold, clear hour, resilience does not feel like an abstract idea. It feels like warm tea after milking, a tightly tied felt cover before snow. A story remembered well enough to pass on, a winter camp chosen with care, a herd checked at dawn, and a door facing the right way when evening comes. The stars burn steadily above the felt walls, and below them the small human circle of the gyre continues, modest and enduring on the wide grassland. At last, you return to the same south-facing door, now silvered by starlight. The threshold is familiar already. You duck inside once more, leaving the great dark plain behind, and entering the round enclosure where warmth has been kept alive with care. The felt walls hold the day's remaining comfort. The stove has settled into a lower, steadier heat. Steam no longer rises eagerly, only now and then in a soft breath from a vessel left warming. The room is quieter than before. Bowls have been stacked, tools are at rest. Bedding is being unfolded from its daytime order. What served as seating and storage begins to become a sleeping place. This too belongs to the intelligence of the Yurt. Space changes its purpose without strain. Little is excessive. What is needed by day yields gently to what is needed by night. The family's voices have lowered. Cloth rustles. An elder coughs softly. A child asks one last question and receives an answer too quiet to catch. These are ordinary sounds, and that is exactly why they feel so complete. History is often remembered through rulers, campaigns, and monuments, but most lives in every age have been held together by scenes like this one. Arranging bedding, banking the fire, checking the door, making sure the animals are near enough, and the weather still fair. You look once more at the structure around you. The wooden lattice, hidden in places by felt and textiles, keeps its even curve. The roof poles lean inward to the crown above, where the last patch of visible night seems deeper now. The hearth remains where it must be, linking warmth, food, and gathering in a single point. Along the walls, chests and belongings rest in patient order, ready to serve tomorrow's work again. Nothing here asks to be admired as luxury. Everything asks to be understood as usefulness shaped into grace. It is worth remembering, even in this peaceful moment, that no single Yurt can stand for all Mongolian life across all centuries. Customs vary. Materials vary. Some households move more often, some less. Some now use trucks where animals once carried more of the load. Some spend part of the year near towns. History resists becoming one fixed, cozy picture, and honesty asks room for that. Yet honesty also allows the continuities to remain visible. The round plan, the felt insulation, the south-facing door, the central hearth, the pastoral labour, the evening meal, and the spoken memory of family. The fire lowers further. Its light moves gently over the painted door frame. A boot set neatly aside, the edge of a blanket. Outside, the stars continue their silent turning, but inside, time feels slower now. The Yurt has done what it was made to do. It has softened wind, held heat, welcomed food, contained labour, and gathered voices. It has turned open land into home for another night, and so the evening returns you to where it began. The same south-facing door stands closed against the dark. The same felt walls soften the wind. The same hearth warms the centre. Outside lies the broad Mongolian grassland under stars. Inside lies the small, complete world made by human hands in partnership with herd, season, and sky. In that round room, as the last murmurs fade and warmth settles deep into wool and wood, the old rhythm of nomadic home life continues, unhurried, sheltered, and gently alive.